Welcome to Mindcraft. You're listening to Mind in Action, the segment where we deconstruct complex philosophies and mental models and turn them into strategic tools you can use today. Today, we're hacking the most fundamental piece of software we all run, our own thinking. We all have a default operating system in our brain, one that relies on copying, iterating, and following the paths others have laid out. It's efficient, but it's also a cage. It limits us to incremental gains and keeps true, game-changing breakthroughs just out of reach. But what if you could uninstall that default OS? What if you could learn to think like the people who have redefined entire industries, from Aristotle to Elon Musk? In this episode, we are going to install a new piece of software. It's called First Principles Thinking. This isn't just a theory, it's an algorithm for dismantling any problem, any assumption, any limitation, and rebuilding a better solution from the ground up. Stay with us as we dissect this powerful tool and give you the blueprint to apply it. Within the complex architecture of human cognition runs a silent background script, that default operating system I mentioned. It's called thinking by analogy. When faced with a problem, this mechanism automatically scans a database of past experiences, other solutions, and socially accepted conventions, then selects a similar template to apply. This is the brain's reliance on heuristics, mental shortcuts that are fast and generally effective, but often crude. It's the root of cognitive biases that keep us tethered to the familiar, favoring imitation over innovation because it is metabolically cheaper. This isn't a sign of intellectual laziness. It's a feature of our biology. According to cognitive load theory, complex, novel problem-solving places an immense strain on our prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center. Thinking by analogy offloads this work to older, more automated parts of the brain, conserving precious glucose and energy. Our default OS is designed for survival, not for breakthroughs. This is an efficient evolutionary feature designed to conserve cognitive energy and facilitate rapid decision-making. It allows us to navigate 99% of our daily routines with seamless efficiency. However, in the critical 1%, the most intractable problems, the most ambitious goals, the most systemic deadlocks, this default OS becomes our greatest limitation. It traps us in a loop of incremental improvement, preventing us from making genuine quantum leaps. It's the reason why companies often produce slightly better versions of their competitors' products instead of inventing something entirely new. It's why we follow career paths laid out by others, rarely stopping to question if the path itself is optimized for our own goals. Thinking by analogy helps you build a slightly better version of your neighbor's house. It never allows you to ask the fundamental question, do we truly need a house, or do we need an optimized living space? And is there a completely different way to architect that space? This limitation is not a failure of intelligence, but a failure of method. This essential question is the gateway to a higher order of thinking. It's a tool not just for solving problems, but for fundamentally restructuring them from the ground up. It's a strategic weapon honed by the greatest minds in history, from Aristotle, who first systemized Western logic, to Elon Musk, who has used it to disrupt and redefine entire industries once thought untouchable. That tool is called First Principles Thinking. This is not an abstract philosophy. It is a technical process, an algorithm for dismantling any complex problem into its most basic, undeniable truths, and from that solid foundation, constructing breakthrough solutions. It is the practice of actively and systematically stripping away the layers of assumption until you are left with only the foundational truths. In today's analysis, we will dissect the structure of this mental model, decode its operational mechanics, and equip you with a methodology to apply it to the greatest challenges in your career and life. Deconstructing the mechanism, analogy versus first principles. To master a tool, you must first understand its mechanics by contrasting it with its counterpart. The distinction between these two modes of thought is the difference between iterating and inventing. Imagine you are a software engineer tasked with building a new application. Thinking by analogy is when you begin by studying competitor apps. You analyze their interfaces, features, and business models. You create feature-by-feature comparison charts. Then you create your own version, perhaps with a few improved features, a slicker UI, or a lower price point. You are essentially iterating on an existing framework. Your product might be functional and it might even capture a small market share, but it's unlikely to be revolutionary. It becomes a Me Too product, a marginal improvement in a crowded space. You are playing the same game as everyone else, merely trying to make slightly better moves. First principles. Thinking is when you step back and ignore all existing products on the market. You clear the slate and start with foundational questions that probe the very nature of the problem. What is the core problem the end user is fundamentally trying to solve? What is their deepest pain point, the job they are hiring a product to do? What are the immutable laws of physics, rules of technology, and principles of behavioral psychology that govern this problem? What is technically possible today that wasn't possible 5 years ago? If we could start from scratch with today's technology and a clean sheet of paper, what is the most efficient, direct, and elegant theoretical solution to that core problem? When you approach from this angle, you are no longer constrained by what others have done. You are redefining the game itself. This is how Airbnb was born. Instead of building a better hotel chain, thinking by analogy, they returned to first principles. They deconstructed the problem of travel accommodation into its essential components. A traveler needs a safe, clean place to sleep in a specific location for a limited time. The analogical solution was a hotel, which bundles these needs with expensive overhead like lobbies, staff, and real estate in prime locations. The first principles insight was recognizing the vast, underutilized asset of empty spare rooms in people's homes. The core challenge then became not building hotels, but engineering a system of trust between strangers. By solving for that fundamental principle, they created an entirely new industry, bypassing the capital-intensive world of real estate altogether. The difference is stark. Thinking by analogy is optimizing within an existing system, which yields linear gains. First principles. Thinking is questioning and redesigning the system itself, which can yield exponential gains. The system's lineage, from Aristotelian logic to Cartesian rationalism. This mental model has a long and rigorous history, forged in the crucibles of philosophy and science. Over 2 millennia ago, Aristotle, in his Posterior Analytics, laid the groundwork. He defined a first principle as the first basis from which a thing is known. For Aristotle, a systematic thinker, achieving true scientific knowledge, episteme, as opposed to mere opinion, doxa, required tracing the chain of cause and effect back to its origin, to basic axioms that could not be proven further, but served as the foundation for proving everything else. It was a process of relentless logical inquiry, designed to build knowledge on a foundation of certainty, not convention. Centuries later, the philosopher and mathematician René Descartes elevated this method with his technique of methodological skepticism. Living in an era where the old scholastic foundations of knowledge were crumbling, Descartes sought absolute certainty. He resolved to treat all his beliefs as false until proven otherwise. He undertook a systematic demolition of his entire intellectual framework, discarding every assumption, every piece of information derived from his senses or his education. His goal was to find an Archimedean point for knowledge, a single, unshakable, indubitable truth upon which he could rebuild everything. This process of radical doubt was not an end in itself, but a tool for purification. That truth, as we know, was cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. The existence of the act of thinking was the undeniable first principle. From that bedrock foundation, Descartes reconstructed a rigorous system of rationalist philosophy, demonstrating that even the most complex systems of belief could be built from the simplest, most certain truths. Case studies and execution, first principles in high-stakes arenas. While the philosophical origins are profound, the modern power of first principles thinking is best demonstrated through its application in environments where the stakes are highest, from reshaping multi-billion-dollar industries to winning life-or-death aerial dogfights. Case Study 1. Elon Musk's physics-based assault on the aerospace industry. If Aristotle and Descartes provided the algorithm, Elon Musk is the one who deployed it with devastating effectiveness in the business world. The SpaceX case study is a masterclass in the power of first principles thinking. In the early 2000s, the aerospace industry was governed by an unquestioned assumption. Rockets are astronomically expensive. The cost of launching to orbit was a massive barrier, accepted as a law of nature. This belief was reinforced by decades of government-funded cost-plus contracts where there was little incentive for radical efficiency. This was industry-level thinking by analogy. Companies looked at each other's costs, which were already inflated by inefficient legacy systems, added a profit margin, and created a market price that was accepted as reasonable. Musk, with his background in physics, refused to accept this assumption. He didn't ask, "How can we make a rocket 10% cheaper?" He asked, "What is the absolute minimum cost of a rocket according to the laws of physics?" He approached the problem as a physicist, not a businessman. 1. Deconstruction. What are the constituent materials of a rocket? Aerospace-grade aluminum alloys, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, propellant. 2. Material costing. What is the value of these materials on the commodity market? 3. Analysis. The result of this process was a shocking truth. The total cost of the raw materials was only about 2% of the typical market price of a rocket. This discovery exposed a critical insight. The enormous cost was not a physical necessity, but the result of a deeply inefficient system. The price was inflated by a convoluted supply chain with multiple layers of subcontractors, each adding their markup, bureaucracy, and most significantly, the incredible waste of discarding tens of millions of dollars worth of machinery after a single use. From the first principle of raw materials are extremely cheap, SpaceX was founded with a mission rebuilt from the ground up. Vertical integration. Manufacture 80 to 90% of components in-house to eliminate supplier markups and control the entire engineering process. Reusability. Attack the core of the cost problem by making rockets that could land and be reused. A goal the entire industry considered fantasy, not because it was physically impossible, but because it was outside their analogical framework. The result is that SpaceX has reduced the cost to orbit by an order of magnitude from tens of thousands of dollars per kilogram to just a few thousand, effectively monopolizing the market and completely reshaping the industry. They didn't compete in the old system. They created a new one based on the fundamental principles of physics. Case Study 2, John Boyd and the Physics of Victory. Long before Silicon Valley adopted disruptive thinking, a maverick U.S. Air Force fighter pilot named John Boyd applied first principles to the deadliest of arenas, aerial combat. In the 1950s and 60s, the conventional wisdom, analogy, in aircraft design was to build planes that were faster and could fly higher, equipped with more advanced technology. Boyd rejected this. He asked a more fundamental question. What are the first principles of winning a dogfight? He went back to physics and thermodynamics, deconstructing aerial combat into a complex interplay of forces: thrust, lift, drag, and weight. He developed the energy maneuverability (EM) theory, a mathematical framework that described an aircraft's performance based on its ability to gain or lose energy in a given situation. His analysis revealed a shocking truth: the most technologically advanced jets were not always the most effective. Victory didn't belong to the fastest or highest flying plane, but to the one that could maneuver more efficiently and transition between states of energy more rapidly than its opponent. From this physical principle, Boyd reconstructed a new theory of combat strategy centered on the OODA Loop: observe, orient, decide, act. He reasoned that all intelligent organisms and organizations undergo this constant cycle. The key to victory is to cycle through your own OODA loop faster and more accurately than your adversary. By doing so, you get inside their decision cycle, making them react to a world that no longer exists. They become confused, disoriented, and ultimately, they collapse. Boyd's work fundamentally changed military doctrine, proving that victory is a function of a superior mental model of reality, not just superior hardware. He didn't just design better tactics. He redefined the physics of winning. Case Study 3, Ray Dalio and the Codification of Principles. In the chaotic world of global finance, where human emotion and cognitive biases are the primary drivers of catastrophic failure, Ray Dalio, founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, used first principles thinking to build an idea meritocracy. The conventional approach to investing, analogy, relies on gut instinct, expert opinions, and chasing recent trends. Dalio saw this as a recipe for disaster. He asked a different question. What are the timeless, universal, cause and effect relationships that govern markets and human decision-making? His deconstruction process was meticulous. For over 4 decades, every trade, every decision, every mistake made at Bridgewater was logged and analyzed. He wasn't just looking at what happened, he was searching for the underlying, repeatable principles that drove the outcome. He deconstructed success and failure into hundreds of explicit, written-down principles. His reconstruction was revolutionary. He and his team codified these principles into algorithms. This created a system where every investment idea proposed by a human was stress-tested against the logical, emotionless framework of the machine. The goal wasn't to replace human thinking, but to augment it, creating a feedback loop between human creativity and algorithmic rigor. Dalio's work is a testament to scaling first principles thinking to an organizational level. He didn't just build a successful hedge fund, he engineered a system for systematically overriding the brain's flawed default OS in one of the most psychologically demanding fields on Earth. The 3-step algorithm for deploying first principles thinking. These case studies demonstrate that first principles thinking is not a random eureka moment, but a methodical process. Anyone can learn and apply this 3-step algorithm to deconstruct complex problems. Step 1. Deconstruct. Break the problem into its core components. The first step is to perform a structural analysis. Look at your problem or assumption and dismantle it into its smallest, most fundamental units of information. This requires ignoring labels, jargon, and pre-packaged definitions, and focusing only on the constituent truths. It's like taking a car engine apart piece by piece until you're left with only nuts, bolts, and raw metal. This step is often the most resisted because it forces us to confront the complexity we usually prefer to ignore. It's easier to talk about improving education than it is to deconstruct education into its components: curriculum design, pedagogical methods, student assessment, teacher training, classroom environment, and parental involvement. But without this granular breakdown, any attempted solution is merely a shot in the dark. Let's apply this to a common goal. I want a successful career. The concept of a successful career is an abstract, socially packaged bundle. Step 1 is to unbundle it. What components conventionally constitute a successful career? Financial, high income, accumulated wealth. Status, job title, rank within an organization. Brand, working for a prestigious company, industry recognition. Power, decision-making authority, influence over others. Stability, a predictable, secure career path. By listing these, you have transformed a vague concept into a set of specific, analyzable variables. Step 2. Interrogate, challenge assumptions, and isolate fundamental truths. This is the core of the entire process. It is the practical application of the philosophical method known as Socratic questioning. The goal is not simply to ask why, but to systematically expose the logical foundations, or lack thereof, of a belief. It's a process that bypasses ego and forces a direct confrontation with the underlying structure of your reasoning. For each variable you've identified, you must conduct a relentless logical interrogation, repeatedly using the question, why? Toyota's 5 whys technique is a variant of this, to drill down past the surface-level assumptions until you hit bedrock. Let's practice with the variables of a successful career. Variable, high income. Oh, why do I need a high income? To have financial freedom. Oh, why do I need financial freedom? To not worry about money and to be able to do what I want. What does do what I want specifically mean? To have time for family, pursue hobbies, learn new things. Analysis. The ultimate goal, then, is not the income figure itself, but autonomy and time. A high income is just one of many means to that end. Are there more efficient means, e.g., lowering expenses, building passive income? Variable, job title, and status. Oh, why do I need a high-status title? To be respected and recognized by others. Oh, why is external recognition important? Because it validates my worth and competence. Oh, why does my sense of worth depend on external validation? Perhaps because I haven't cultivated a strong internal sense of value based on my own standards. Oh, analysis. The root need here is a sense of worth. Anchoring this feeling to an external, volatile factor like a job title is a high-risk strategy. The first principle is, true worth comes from competence and contribution, factors within your locus of control, not from the label attached to you. Variable stability. Oh, why do I need stability? To feel secure. Oh, does stability in a large corporation truly guarantee security in the 21st century? No. Mass layoffs prove this stability is often an illusion. Where does real security come from? It comes from adaptability and a valuable, hard-to-replace skill set. Analysis. The first principle of career security is not clinging to one organization, but building a diverse and liquid skill portfolio that makes you anti-fragile to market shifts. After this interrogation, what remains are not social desires, but the physical principles of a resilient career: autonomy, competence, contribution, adaptability, and resources, financial, temporal. Step 3. Reconstruct. Engineer a solution from first principles. Once you have your set of foundational principles, you can begin the engineering process. This is where you build a new strategy, a new solution, unconstrained by the pre-existing options. This step is about moving from analysis to synthesis. It's crucial to understand that you are not looking for a single perfect answer. Instead, you are generating a portfolio of superior options that were previously invisible when you were trapped in analogical thinking. Based on the career principles we just identified, what might a reconstructed, successful career look like? It might not be climbing the corporate ladder, but building a portfolio career that combines a day job, freelance projects, and a small business venture. A week in this life could involve 20 hours as a consultant for a tech company, 15 hours developing a personal software product, and 5 hours advising a nonprofit. This strategy optimizes for autonomy and adaptability. It might be focusing the first 2 to 3 years of a career not on maximizing income, but on maximizing the rate of learning in a high-challenge environment like a startup. This strategy optimizes for competence, viewing early career years as an investment in building a powerful skill stack. It might be deliberately choosing a lower-paying job that offers significant social impact or allows for more time for personal projects, such as writing a book or training for a marathon. This strategy optimizes for contribution and autonomy. By reconstructing from first principles, you shift from being a passive player in the job market to an active architect of your own career. The First Principles Toolkit, from theory to tactical execution. An algorithm is only as effective as the tools used to execute it. To move first principles thinking from an abstract concept to a repeatable, high-output practice, you need a tactical toolkit. These are frameworks designed to add rigor to each step of the process. Tool for Step 1, Deconstruct. The issue tree and MICE principle. To ensure your deconstruction is thorough and logical, deploy the issue tree, a framework championed by top consulting firms like McKinsey. The governing rule of an effective issue tree is the MEC principle: mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. This means each component at a given level of the tree should be entirely separate from the others, mutually exclusive, and that all components together should fully cover the parent problem without leaving any gaps, collectively exhaustive. For example, if the problem is declining company profit, a MEC deconstruction would break it down into 2 and only 2 branches: revenue and costs. Profit, by definition, is revenue minus costs. This is a first principle. You cannot break it down any other way at the highest level without overlap or omission. From there, revenue can be broken down into price per unit and number of units sold. Costs can be broken down into fixed costs and variable costs. This method forces you to map the entire problem space logically, preventing you from jumping to conclusions or focusing on a minor, irrelevant component. It transforms a vague problem into a structured map of its fundamental drivers. Tool for Step 2, Interrogate, Assumption Reversal. The interrogation step is designed to break the mental models that lock you into analogical thinking. A powerful technique for this is assumption reversal. The process is simple but profound. 1. List all the dominant assumptions about your problem or domain. 2. For each assumption, write its complete opposite. 3. Use these reversals as creative prompts to explore new possibilities. Consider the restaurant industry. A core assumption is a restaurant must have a fixed physical location. Reversal: a restaurant does not need a fixed physical location. New possibilities. This reversal directly leads to the concepts of food trucks, pop-up restaurants, catering businesses, and ghost kitchens that exist only for delivery apps. Another example from the software industry. A dominant assumption in the 1990s was software must be sold for a high Getty one-time fee. Reversal: software does not need to be sold for a one-time fee. New possibilities. This single reversal gave birth to the entire software as a service (SaaS) industry, with its subscription models, freemium tiers, and usage-based pricing. Assumption reversal is a systematic way to generate disruptive ideas by intentionally breaking the unwritten rules of your domain. Tool for step 3, reconstruct. Constraint combination. Creativity thrives under constraints. After you've isolated your true first principles in step 2, they no longer function as vague desires, but as hard design constraints for your new solution. The reconstruction phase is an exercise in creative problem solving within these new self-defined boundaries. For instance, if your first principles analysis of a career revealed your core needs are high autonomy, geographic freedom, and intellectual challenge, these 3 factors become the non-negotiable constraints for your solution. A traditional corporate job might satisfy intellectual challenge, but would likely fail on the other 2. Your task is to engineer a career model that satisfies all 3 simultaneously. This could lead to solutions like becoming a high-end freelance consultant in a specialized niche, starting a fully remote online business, or becoming a paid researcher. This method prevents you from falling back into conventional options and forces you to build a solution that is authentically aligned with your foundational truths. Scaling first principles, engineering a culture of inquiry. The true leverage of this mental model is unlocked when it is scaled from an individual practice to an organizational culture. A single first principles thinker is an asset. An entire organization that operates this way is an unstoppable force. However, this requires a deliberate and sustained effort from leadership to re-engineer the company's own operating system. Failure to do so is not just a missed opportunity, it's an existential threat. This is the core lesson of Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma. Market-leading companies often fail precisely because they are too good at optimizing their existing analogy-based business models. They serve their current customers so well that they fail to see the disruptive, first principles-based innovations emerging from the fringes until it's too late. The leader's role, from chief decision-maker to chief questioner. In a traditional, analogy-driven organization, the leader's role is to have the right answers. In a first principles organization, the leader's role is to ask the right questions and to create an environment where others feel safe to do the same. This requires establishing a culture of high psychological safety combined with high intellectual rigor. Psychological safety means that team members can challenge a prevailing assumption, even one held by the CEO, without fear of professional retribution. It means that failed experiments are treated as data-gathering exercises, not as career-limiting mistakes. This is not about being nice. It is a strategic prerequisite for innovation. In a culture of fear, the default behavior is analogy because it is safe and defensible. In a culture of high psychological safety, individuals are empowered to take the cognitive risks necessary to engage in first principles thinking. Google's famous, though now modified, 20% time policy was a structural embodiment of this, giving engineers the autonomy to work on projects from first principles, leading to innovations like Gmail and AdSense. This safety, however, must be paired with ruthless intellectual honesty. The leader must model and demand that all ideas, especially their own, are stress-tested against the fundamental principles of the business and the needs of the customer. The goal is to create a culture of inquiry, not a culture of compliance. It's about building a collective intelligence that is more robust than any single individual's. Codifying principles into processes. The Amazon Day 1 case study. The most effective way to scale first principles thinking is to embed it directly into the core processes of the organization. Perhaps no company has done this more effectively than Amazon under the leadership of Jeff Bezos. Amazon's foundational first principle is customer obsession. This is not a vague mission statement. It is the central axiom from which all other decisions are derived. To ensure this principle is consistently applied, Amazon engineered a unique product development process known as working backwards. Instead of starting with a product idea or a competitor analysis, any new initiative at Amazon must begin with the team writing an internal press release. This document announces the finished product, outlining how it will solve a customer's problem and the benefits they will experience. The press release is accompanied by a FAQ document that anticipates and answers difficult customer and internal questions. This process forces every team, from the very beginning, to reconstruct their solution from the customer's point of view. It prevents them from building technology for technology's sake or simply copying a competitor's feature. If the team cannot write a compelling press release that clearly articulates overwhelming customer value, the product is not approved. This is a system that enforces first principles thinking at scale, ensuring that the organization, regardless of its size, remains anchored to its most fundamental truth. Risk analysis and calibration factors. Deploying first principles thinking is not without its costs and risks. To apply it effectively, one must recognize and manage three key factors. 1. Cognitive cost. Thinking by analogy is fast and cheap. Deconstructing and interrogating mental structures, in contrast, requires deep focus and consumes a vast amount of cognitive resources, primarily from the energy-hungry prefrontal cortex. Applying it to every decision would lead to burnout. Effective strategy. Apply the 80-20 rule. Reserve this energy-intensive process for the top 20% of decisions and problems that will generate 80% of the results in your life and career. 2. Risk of non-conformity. When you build solutions from first principles, your chosen path will often diverge from the norm. This can create friction with social, familial, or corporate expectations. It requires intellectual independence and the fortitude to withstand social pressure. Many revolutionary ideas were initially met with ridicule. The social cost of being an outlier is real. It can lead to isolation and doubt. Effective strategy. Understand this as a calculated trade-off. Communicate the logic behind your decisions clearly, but do not seek universal approval. Build a small, trusted circle of fellow first principles thinkers who can act as a sounding board. Breakthroughs are always preceded by a period of being misunderstood. 3. The over-optimization trap, analysis paralysis. The process is, by its nature, analytical. Without a stopping point, it can lead to analysis paralysis, where you endlessly deconstruct without ever moving to the reconstruct and action phase. Effective strategy. Set a time limit for the analysis phase. Embrace the principle of good enough to start and adopt a bias toward action. Remember, the goal is to produce a version 1.0 to test in the real world, not a perfect plan on paper. Data from real-world action is the most valuable input for the next iteration of the process. Conclusion. So, we've deconstructed the algorithm of first principles thinking. We've seen how it was forged in philosophy, tested in battle, and deployed to build empires. We've also equipped you with a tactical toolkit to move it from theory into practice. Let's bring it back to the core. First principles thinking is not about being smarter. It's about being more rigorous. It's about having the intellectual courage to ask the simple, powerful questions that everyone else overlooks. It's about trading the comfort of convention for the power of clarity. The brain's default operating system was designed for survival, not for breakthroughs. To achieve extraordinary things, you must be willing to install a new one. So here is your challenge, your call to action for this episode of Mind in Action. Don't just listen to this. Apply it. Select one major assumption, one obvious truth that has governed your life or your work. Perhaps it is, to succeed in this field, I must follow path A, or this problem X is impossible to solve, or I don't have enough resources to start project Y. Run it through the three-step algorithm we discussed. Deconstruct it, interrogate it without mercy, and see what new possibilities emerge from the rubble of that old assumption. And we want to hear about it. In the comments section for this episode, tell us the one assumption you are going to challenge this week using first principles thinking. Share your process, share your insights. Let's build a community of rigorous thinkers. If you found value in this deep dive, make sure you are subscribed to Mindcraft. We release new episodes of Mind in Action regularly, deconstructing the mental models that give you a strategic edge. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Thank you for listening. Now go rewrite the code.